This episode of Comics for Fun and Profit is brought to you by Threadless. More importantly, the Comics Fun Profit shop on Threadless at comicsfunprofit.threadless.com, where you can find a dozen different designs, plenty of Comics for Fun and Profit themed merch. If you just want a t-shirt, you're good, and if you want sweatshirts or other swaggy items, and you can get anything. Phone cases, shower curtains. It runs the gamut. Skateboards, I think. So check that out. We've already sold several. We're excited about the fact that the folks that want to support us in this way are able to and wear our merch out in the real world. That's pretty exciting stuff. So get your Comics for Fun and Profit branded items at comicsfunprofit.threadless.com.
Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing the creators of White Savior. It is a it's a four-issue limited series through Dark Horse. The creators are Nguyen and Scott Burman. Oh God, I messed up that name. Sorry, Scott.
My name isn't as important as Eric, so it's all good here.
All right. So Eric and Scott co-wrote this story, and Eric also did the artwork on White Savior. Now, the first issue is out in stores right now. Issue 2 comes out on February 15th. Eric and Scott, welcome to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. But a quick thing, the first issue is in stores next Wednesday, January 18th.
No, thank you. But the thing is, I'll be honest with you, because this episode may come out close to towards the end of January or February. So I'm.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's new to us. How did you find that out?
No, I'm sure you probably said it and we missed it. It's all good. We're happy whenever it comes out. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Normally, and usually I'll let creators know that I let them know up front that, hey, we release one interview an episode per week. We've already got some in the can already, and this will probably come out in like.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying then. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
This is going to be part of the podcast. It's going to be. I think it's entertaining either way. Let's just do it.
Obviously, Jason, I'm new to this. Doing these interviews.
No, that's fine.
Here's how new to interviews go. I've never listened to a podcast in my life, and Eric, I think you've listened to one, if I'm right.
Yeah, I actually turned on Mike's podcast this morning while driving the kids to school and see how it's like.
Okay, so is it Mike Myers that you're referring to?
Yeah, Mike Myers. Yeah.
So perfect, because I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Myers. Because he mentioned on he was a guest host on the regular Comics for Fun and Profit podcast, and he mentioned about that you emailed him. I'm podcast friends with Mike, so I heard about that. I contacted Mike, and that's how I got a hold of you. So I'm going to ask, how did you hear about Mike's podcast?
Eric, your email. Am I right, Eric?
Well, it's one of those things that, man. I mean, the whole story is that we, initially at Dark Horse, we were hoping to have Dark Horse do a lot of the marketing, have their whole team behind it and everything. But we found out a little bit later that, there's some internal restructuring happening, and and so by the time
just promoted somebody there, and now they're hiring other people under her, and so there's just a little bit of a time frame, but now they're getting all the guns behind it now. So, but there was a little period during the holiday when it was a little bit slower, understandably, and so we've been trying to just spread the word ourselves to get this bad boy going here. as well in tandem with him. And Eric and I aren't as big marketers as the machine of Dark Horse is, and so we're we're not as so like me, like social media. Both Eric and I barely go on podcasts. I don't listen to, so it's just kind of funny for us to be promoting a bit.
So what we're
we
doing, we just went from connections to people I've worked with. I emailed a lot of my colleagues. I used my Twitter account, and I just putting it out there. Whoever responded to us, they referred us to other people, and so we're sending out a little previews here, so that just to try to get awareness to it the best we can.
Yes.
And so, man, it's surprisingly, we had a lot of great responses. A lot of people who I've worked in the past that actually I haven't spoken to in years responded to me, and which is great. I mean, our art community is pretty small, so but they're also very helpful.
Okay, and I'm Scott. I know I'm kind of going off cuff here, but so like you said, you guys are kind of sort of doing your own self-promoting right now. Like, are you guys going to be on other? I know, Eric, you did a written interview with Barbara Dillon of the fan base press. She's a friend of the show, so I saw that, and I got some of the information.
Cool,
interview.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, are you guys invited to any other podcasts that people should check out? Or
we are. So yeah, we're going on them. It's hard to remember sometimes. I know we just did the Comic Yeti podcast.
Oh yes.
And Comic Crusaders with the Machine on there. Gotta love the Machine. And then we've got a couple more coming up. And to be honest, we've been so busy. Between I have like a full-time job, and so we've been so busy scheduling them that it's hard to remember the names. Am I right, Eric? Do you remember any of the names I missed?
Yeah, like this morning it's not a podcast, but we had a conversation with who was Asian Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we talked to the Asian American Foundation. Oh, we did an interview with Comic-Con.
We did that too, Comic-Con. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And
Comic-Con.
Scott, you can tell them about Next Shark. Jason, you know about Next Shark?
No, I no.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so Next Shark's just a very, very prominent Asian American media outlet, and so that's the one that. It's funny. I, the white guy, am more excited about the Next Shark one than anything else comic related, because I think that we're trying to get we're trying to reach out to non-comic book readers as well.
Yes.
And so we think that getting the support from the Asian American community will hopefully be a big boon for us, basically.
Yes. Yeah. No, that I understand.
Yeah, because right now with all the thing with Michelle Yeoh winning the her thing, and so and that the Marvel movie, how we're with the more representational type of heroes that's happening, and so even though our book, Todd, he's not your traditional hero, but he is the star of the show.
Yes. So I'm just gonna say let's just jump right into the book. Let's just start talking about it. So okay, so so basically, for the listeners, no spoilers, what's the story about?
Scott will do this part.
So this is always a funny question when we get asked it, because Eric and I as we're doing these interviews, we're learning who should say what part. And so a big part of White Savior is that it takes the famous white savior trope of a white person going into a village or a town and saving all the underrepresented people from various misfortunes.
Yes.
And so in our case, the white guy is an idiot. And he's the last person you'd ever want to save anybody from anything.
Yes.
And so Eric prefers when I say the white guy is an idiot as to him. And so the hero in our book is Todd Parker, an Asian American film teacher who
Yes.
time travels to Japan and has to convince everybody not to follow the white savior. And so, yes, there's my little elevator pitch, very practiced and rehearsed. Yes, and so it's just spinning the genre on its head, and yeah, and we think the story is just something that fans are gonna like. It's got badass action and art from
Yes.
the master Eric here. It's got killer comedy. Every page is just riddled with.
Yes.
I don't want to brag, but the best jokes you'll ever read in comics history. And of course, it's got the message that is obviously very important to get across as well.
Eric, I'm going to ask you. So how? Actually, I'm going to start off with it. Like, how did you and Scott team up for this book? And yeah, so how did you guys team up for this book? How did you guys come up with this story?
Whew, boy, how we teamed up is kind of a weird story. I mean, this is about 6 or 7 years ago. I get this email from Scott. I have no idea who he is. He just pretty much like cold calling and just sending scripts around. And it was just one of the times where I was either on a break between jobs or something where I had time to read stuff. And I read that a script that he sent me called, I think it was How I Got Drunk and Saved the World. Yes. And it was so good. I mean, it was so funny that, I mean, I didn't know who Scott was, but I mean, I've done so many scripts before. I've done so many books, serious books, noir books and all that stuff. And actually, I was looking for something a little bit different. And his scripting, it's not just the story itself, but his characterization and scripting was so good that I called him and I said, yeah, I mean, what are you thinking about? What else do you have? And so we just started brainstorming from there, just jumping on what we both wanted to do. And at the time there, I think it was that time where that movie, The Great Wall or something with Matt Damon that was out. And everyone's making fun of how Matt Damon just saved China. I mean, saved the wall. I mean, it was so awesome, right? I mean, sarcastically. And so we're like, you know what? Next time, why don't we just kind of spin that? And Scott made some jokes. I was like, dude, this is funny. I mean, we can take this and we actually the first issue was just a setup, but we do a lot of other crazy stuff in issue 2, 3, and 4. I mean, we actually go further than what people would think what's going to happen. So and yeah, and so from there, that's how we started with and the title White Savior kind of came from that, and we just went from that, trying to make it even more ridiculous on what a real white savior is or should have been, or you know, in this day and age.
So I know the white savior in issue number 1. I think like literally the first panel, the first page, his name is Nathan Garin. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then of course, you know, and Scott, like you mentioned, that, you know, basically the main hero, the main character of this series is Todd Parker. I'm going to ask, you've already talked a little bit about Todd, you already talked a little bit about Nathan. I would just wanted to go over like one side character that might play a important role in Todd's life, his grandfather. So, like if you guys, Scott, I'm going to ask, can you just go over, who is Todd's grandfather?
Well, we hope in the movie the grandfather will be George Takei. We want to make sure that gets out. But yeah, the grandfather's just first off, it's a little crazy that everybody has been latching on to the grandfather character, and Eric and I had no idea people would be like, he was just the character who kind of passes the story of the failed white savior down from generation to generation. And in hindsight, we wish the grandfather character had more of a role to play in the story. But unfortunately, Todd time travels to feudal Japan while the grandfather's still there. You might see another appearance by him, and hopefully in the sequel, Grandpa Parker is going to get some ass kicking moments as well. Yeah.
And speaking of George Takei, because there is a funny moment. Yeah, I'm trying not to spoil it, but all of a sudden you guys put, look, here is, George Takei's great grandfather. I love that reference. And now, Scott, since you're putting it out there, you're hoping George Takei would listen to this podcast and call you directly, right?
Yeah.
That's the plan. We're not hard people to get a hold of just because Google, easy Google. It's not like we have any gatekeepers. It's not like we're important enough to have gatekeepers.
The thing about the book,
it.
The thing about the book is, I mean, Scott just throws in these little nuggets of just fun stuff that people just will latch onto and relate to. I mean, just like these are just like quirks during the book. When you read it, you just relate to it so much that it gives you a little laugh.
It does. I mean, we can't spoil. I don't want to spoil it because it. All I can say is, listeners. I know I've only seen issue number 1, and like I said, by the time this comes out, already issue 1's already out in stores. But as Eric said, issue 2 that's going to come out in February is going to get wilder.
So I'll tell you one interesting point about that is, so Eric and I did kind of like a very much a Marvel method. We sat down and we made an outline for the story, and then Eric drew it, and Eric wanted to just be like completely unfettered in his art. And so this was, I guess, like, this is what Eric wanted to do. I said, hey, we'll do whatever you want. And so then we got together to kind of put jokes on the page.
Yes.
And one thing that I kind of realized is that the second, the third, the fourth issues, they get a lot crazier. And so because of that, I was like, we got to take this book, we got to make it as crazy as we possibly can with the dialogue and the narration to set people up for how much we ramp it up in the other issues. So it was a fun thing to do, to just throw jokes back and forth at each other to put the funniest stuff on the page.
Now, one question I wanted that I found very interesting was that, Scott, I know you mentioned that, that most of the story takes place in feudal Japan. So, Eric, I'm going to throw this question to you, and if Scott, if you can just answer. So, was there a particular reason why you guys wanted feudal Japan, not, I mean, kind of like, why Japan? Why feudal Japan? Why not China? Why not Korea? I don't,
Well, to me, I didn't have one. I didn't really mind one way or the other, but there's a reason why Scott did, because he has a lot of references that he puts in that some people picked up on.
Oh, okay.
Well, so there's a bit more to that story. So interestingly enough, when we were first getting it out there, because this was, it's not like Dark Horse, we told Dark Horse the idea and they said, yes, let's do it. We first were trying to create it and then pitch it around. So because of that, and we didn't know if we'd get a publisher. And so because of that, I was reaching out to various Asian American celebrities and influencers. And the idea kind of sprung in my mind, if we got one of them to let us use their likeness, perhaps we could more easily sell the book. And so because of that, we had a fairly famous Japanese person interested. So that's why we had it set in feudal Japan. That person dropped out of it. And so we're just like, hey, we went with Japan. We're sticking with Japan.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and the other reason is why, because it's just drawing badass samurai is up Eric's alley. That's the second too.
So Eric, this is kind of sort of more of a process question for you, Eric. So already you guys decided we're going to do feudal Japan. How much research did you do in the samurai armor? Did you like look through books? I'm not being sarcastic, but did you visit any of the museums that have in your area, if they're open during the pandemic, to take pictures or anything like that?
Yeah, during that time where we made a lot of strides was during the pandemic, and so usually Google is probably before I used to go take my own pictures, do a lot of that sort of research, but now with Google, I scoured the net for anything Japanese, whether it was not just samurais, but anything, their culture, the kimonos, the the flowers and everything. And so I usually, when I do a book or do any sort of project, I'll research the hell out of it. I read through it and just get a folders of research on the setting, the time period. But you do that with every project that you work on. At least you kind of should.
Because I have to say, because the Japanese armor, the attention to detail on some of the close-ups is incredible, Eric. It's
thank you.
Very incredible. It's really like, I know the stories, sort of a spoof on the Great Wall or Dances with Wolves, but yet the attention to the detail, trying to make sure that it's grounded in some form of reality. And like I said, just looking at the armor, when Todd is already back in time, there's correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like one big panel where there's two samurai warriors fighting. All the I'm going to just tell the listeners there's craziness that ensues, but just seeing the armor on just those two is very detailed, very nice.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to start. Actually, Eric, I'm going to start off with you, and then Scott, please chime in. Because Todd's grandfather plays like a small role in the story. Like, was it in and Scott, like you said that, the grandfather tells this story, about the failure of the white savior. Now, to me, I thought it was interesting I thought that was really good, because my question is, was it intentional to include some type of cultural traditions, such as like the passing down of stories, like an oral history, setting, or was that intentional, or
Yeah, it was kind of how our Asian grandparents always tells us stories. And so that's where it was based off of. We got these old stories, and then Scott throws in a joke. I guess it's the joke is how stories change over time too. Yes. And so it gets even and so and Scott, and Todd's like, I don't believe you, Grandpa, because it changes so much. And so he's kind of like, Grandpa, he's just in his old ways, just telling his stories again.
And then also too, actually, I want to ask you, Scott, and Eric, please feel free to comment on this. Was it intentional to have Todd, because correct me if I'm wrong, because Todd is, I guess he's is he a second generation in his family, Japanese to be, is he the second generation? Because it sounds like, his grandfather, I don't know if the grandfather is the first generation in America and Todd's the second generation. And the only reason why I ask about that is because Todd seems to be more westernized in terms of that he knows more about, and he makes a comment about, come on, Grandpa, I know more about McDonald's foods than the seven samurai movies, you know, was that intentional to make Todd almost completely westernized already?
Scott?
Yeah, I was gonna look to you on that one, Eric. We kind of, a lot of the character of Todd is kind of based off of Eric. A lot of it is, and
Okay.
I think that, and I don't know if I would go as far as to say Eric's westernized, but I would say like Eric's just a regular guy. Like that's what Todd is. He's just a like he's just a regular guy. The only thing Eric I think has ever really talked about me with is food, where he talks about being Vietnamese is just the Vietnamese food he makes. But other than that, like we're just two average Americans. And I think
Todd.
You
I mean,
wanna
it's actually something that every kind of Asian person who's grown up for most of their life, they'll relate to. I mean, because I definitely relate to that. The way he's thinking, the way he makes his comments, and that's how I generally feel too. I mean, it's like, yeah, we don't know this, we don't know that, and yes, we're not this, we're not that. It's just that attitude that he carries while he's riding his bike. That's definitely something I relate to. I mean, it is, and it's funny because it is Scott when he throws in these narrations from the pages. It works so well because everyone. I mean, there was this thing about how his name came about, and we kept it. I mean, especially the Parker, because everyone loves Peter Parker, right?
Oh my God!
And so when he was narrating it, I was like, man, this reminds me how natural Peter Parker was as well, where he's just like going, when he first started, and so it just made sense to me. And when I was drawing this page and him riding his bike, it's just like it worked so well.
Eric, I'm going to ask you this question because, like Scott said, Todd, and correct me if I'm wrong about this. So like Scott mentioned, that kind of Todd is almost like you, right? The character, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you about this. It was like, no, actually, I'm going to make a comment. I'm sorry, it's a comment. The thing I love about Todd narrating the story is, excuse me, is that as the readers, for the readers, he's breaking the Asian stereotypes. Because I love it when the narration goes, yes, I'm Asian, but I'm not good at math, I don't know karate, Because I just found that funny. I mean, and did you write that part, Eric, or did Scott write it, or?
Well, the joke, when we're doing the whole script, Scott and I will come up with scenarios that we have so many different scenarios, and I would decide what to kind of draw and try to pace the pages for a 22, 26, or 24 page book. And so I would choose these scenes and that I thought was easiest and most interesting scenes to do. Then once Scott sees those pages, he would put those the words together, the scripting itself, and we'll throw jokes back and forth, what would work, where it goes on the page, and so that's how we came about with, and that's what we consider like the Marvel method, where we'll see the pages at the end, we'll throw dialogue back into it, just make sure that the flow is correct.
Now, Scott, this question is for you, and Eric, please feel free to chime in. Not just only for the first issue, but maybe either, if you guys have, did you guys have so much material that you guys had to cut out some stuff, leave it on the floor? I mean, oh my God, this would be great, but
yes.
So we actually had this is a very interesting question. So we originally had it at about 8 issues. Is what we originally had it at, and we brought it to Dark Horse. We didn't mention when we brought it to Dark Horse that we had 8 issues planned, because we only had the one finished at that time. And so they told us they wanted 4 issues, and to be fair, we never asked for 8, and I think it was a blessing in disguise, because I think it works better as 4.
Yes.
But we have we had a whole nother subplot involved that we got rid of, which I think is actually for the better. And so it's interesting that we just never we probably could have asked Dark Horse. They've been so great with giving us everything. And so, but we just didn't think to, and we thought, you know what, I think we could bring this down a bit. And I think it might have made the book even funnier, because it's less spread out with all of our jokes. But yeah, there was definitely a couple of subplots that were we do hope that we could use these subplots in spin-offs. And so that's we have that kind of etched in our mind a little bit, but we don't want to jump the gun yet on anything.
Oh no, yeah. So and Scott, since you mentioned about Dark Horse, I'm gonna actually, Eric, I'm gonna start off with you with this question. So how did you guys team up with Dark Horse?
Yes. That's actually a good one too, because at the time I was doing more work with Marvel. I think I was on finishing up Starboy with The Weekend. I did that book. I don't know if you've seen that book or not, but I did the Starboy book. That was The Weekend had a collaboration with Marvel to do. And at the time,
the huge pop superstars said, "I want Eric to be my artist." Boom, right there. I'm Eric's promo man sometimes for him over here. He had his selection of everybody. He picked Eric. Throwing that out there. Weekend, if you're listening, give us a little White Savior promo. He's probably not listening, but throwing that out there.
Yeah, so
go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. So we had the first issue done, and we didn't know where we wanted to go with it. We were looking around for a publisher. We even thought about doing a Kickstarter ourselves and kind of do a crowdsourcing for it. But I just decided to send it to my editor, Patrick, at Dark Horse. That I have a great relationship with Dark Horse, because I've done 20-something issues of Ex-Vigilante for Dark Horse prior to that, and they love my work there, and honestly, I didn't expect them to get back to me so quickly. But the next day, people inside Dark Horse read it. It got up to Mike Richardson, and he loved it. And we got a response the next day. They said they are interested. They wanted to talk more, and so we got on the phone, and here we are a couple of years later. With a 4-issue done, getting ready for the entertainment part to take their crack at it. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit more than just a comic book. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Oh, okay, all right. And then
that reminds me of something you were saying earlier. Actually, a question you were saying earlier. What was cut out?
Yes.
So I like to have a character that looks like me in every comic. And so we had a character, General Davis E. Davis, who I described as what would happen if I mated with Yosemite Sam. And Eric never got to draw that character, which I would have loved to have seen. So maybe in a spin-off, we'll see what Eric would have come up with.
That'd be pretty cool. Eric, you already mentioned Mike Richards. You already mentioned about it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think his name was Patrick, one of the editors that you worked with before.
Yeah, the main editor is Patrick Thorpe, and he's a longtime editor at Dark Horse and fantastic editor. He's does a great job.
And then I'm going to ask, actually, Eric, I'll start off with this. Do you want to give a shout out to the creative team that helped you with this book? Helped you guys with this book?
Yeah, we have a great colorist, Ewan. He's I don't know where he's from actually originally, but he actually took a lot of my open line art with a little bit of grays and did a fantastic job filling in the background, the making the the foliage for
Mm-hmm.
the for different settings, and I mean he just did a great job just making um, the color palette of
Yes. Mm-hmm.
back in Japan and everything. And so that helped me refine and fine tune it as a final. But he did a great job with the coloring. And Scott, you worked with the letter. I think this is the first time Scott worked with the letter. Oh my goodness!
The letter was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I was not awesome. I'll say that it because it's my first time with the letterer,
Mm-hmm.
and we were doing it in kind of the Marvel method.
Yes.
Everything the letterer did looked awesome.
Yeah.
But me, I would sometimes be like, "Hey, let's bold." The bolding was the big part that I think I could have done a better job at explaining because I would be like, "Bold this word." Wait, no, that word isn't funny if it's bolded. Bold this word.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm pretty sure I was learning. You know, it was
Yeah.
my first time doing it, and so everything the letterer did looked. Micah Myers is his name. He's
Mm-hmm.
the best damn letterer out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very specific about the jokes, and so I'm like, if the right word isn't bolded, the joke's not going to be as funny. I
Yeah.
might be psychotic for saying that, but you kind of have to learn it when you see it on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish in hindsight that uh, I would have been able to test things out for him. I could never in a million years make anything look as good as Micah does.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I could have like, tested out the bolding part,
Mm-hmm.
just because that I could see him going, this guy is hey. But I was just learning, and he was just as supportive as a human being could possibly be. If I were him, I would want to kill me, but he was just the most helpful,
Mm-hmm.
easygoing guy in the world. And now I've learned for the next time,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'll know how to do it better. But yeah.
This is an example. Scott is an example of how when you first do your first book, you're so involved with it that that you actually come up with some great ideas. There was a time where I told Scott, dude, I don't think it matters. But actually, when it was done, when you read the book, Jason, at the very end, how Nathan speaks and how they did that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, I was like, "No, man, don't worry about that." But now when I see it and when I read it, I was like, "That's perfect."
Mm-hmm.
How they did the lettering on that.
And what's really funny is in reverse to that. So I'm very much like, oh, this word has to be perfect and this word has to be bold. I'm very much like that. And with the art, Eric will be like, stop, it doesn't matter, just do it, dude. And with the art, Eric will sometimes say to me, what do you think of the pendant on this guy's uniform? And I'm like, Eric, I don't care about the pendant on this guy's uniform. So the same kind of like Eric, yeah, it looks great. What are you nitpicking about?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tiny little thing that the whole page is the most gorgeous thing. You're in this little thing, and so
Mm-hmm.
we're both very much like that in tune with what we work on. It's just kind of funny.
That's pretty cool that you guys work together perfectly on that. That's great. I also noticed in the book, I think it's on the credits page is that there's three people that you guys want to give special thanks to. You know, do you guys, I'm gonna let you. Do you guys want to give shout outs to them? And how did they help with the book?
Yeah, they're all of them are my friends from college and high school even. And Gensho is Japanese, and so he would kind of go over all of the Japanese stuff to make sure that everything was authentic.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so Gensho did a great job of that. And Jamar's one of my best friends from college, and we would sometimes go to him for our jokes, like and we would say, hey, we want to make sure that the jokes are as funny as they could be, if you will. Like,
Yes.
um, and so we would say, hey, Jamar, is this funny? And Jamar was actually one of my bold friends, in which I would say, hey, I bolded this word. Is this the right word to bold? And so like he's just a really good resource to kind of test our jokes on a lot of the time. And Jackie Rowe is one of my oldest friends from high school, and she would help with authentication in the story and any edits and anything that we wanted to make sure that everything was culturally appropriate.
Yes.
And so that's why and in the first issue she was also really good at correcting any grammatical or spelling errors that we might have had.
Oh, we had
as
a lot.
well. Yeah. That was before we brought it to Dark Horse. Dark Horse, of course, has a whole department that does that, but she helped out with that a lot. So that was the team of special thanks people were over there.
Okay. All right, Eric, I'm slowly wrapping things up. So Eric, again, we know that this is a limited series. You guys talk about possible spin-offs. Originally this was, that there's a subplot. Eric and Scott, please chime in as well too. Is that, will we see Todd in another adventure after this story?
Oh, we'll see. Like we have a plan for a second arc, but we'll just see where it goes from here. But I do have, I would like to see us do a one shot of you'll read in the third issue what the one shot would be. That would be fantastic to do a one shot spinoff of one of the supporting cast. I think that would be amazing. I mean, there's so many jokes that we can just we already have so many different ways of taking that one, but a lot of times I hope when people read this they understand it first and foremost. It's to make people laugh. It's a satire and it's comedy, and the banter between the supporting cast is great. Like I've been telling other people when we do these interviews that I've done so many serious books, mission-based books, where everyone's so serious and the dialogue is the point of each dialogue is to further the mission, further the plot. But in our book, the dialogue is not really there. The point isn't to further any mission, but it's just it's almost like a drama, a bantering of friends, and it's more like how people really talk to each other and sass each other as well. And there's a lot of that going on that I think works really well, makes people relate to each character more. And I think that's what's really strong with the book.
That's right, because I love the scene between Todd and I can't remember his bodybuilder friend,
Neil.
That scene, I mean, it was because it felt natural. It felt it felt real and natural, and and I'm sorry, his name was Neil.
Neil, yes.
Neil, yeah.
How Neil says, "Oh my God, I remember the time that you strained a muscle just trying to fill out an application at the fitness center." It was great. It was just, Eric, when you mentioned about the bantering, I was like, yeah, that's right, because it was just a nice moment, and it felt real and genuine,
Well, thank you. I think that's one of the very strong suits that Scott brings. That's why I decided to do a book with him, is because like I said, when I first read his I'm drunk and the guy saves the world being drunk. I mean, it's just the dialogue and the scripting of the characterization is so good that you relate to the characters.
Especially if you're an alcoholic in the How I Got Drunk one. Yeah. No, I'm just
now I'm going to start slowly wrapping things up, but actually, Scott, since we've already mentioned, about that, about the How I Got Drunk and Saved the World, now, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. So is that story completed and everything, or where can listeners,
I've actually got an artist working on the first issue, and if White Savior takes off, we're hoping that somebody will pick it up. So I've got another one called Echelon
Yes.
with Hugo Pettit. So he's drawn Justice League and a couple other things. And again, we're hoping if White Savior takes off, I'll get to do all these. But more than anything, I'm hoping if White Savior takes off, Eric and I become the tag team that we already are, and just take over all comics essentially. I mean, Eric and we're the perfect team. I mean, everything he does, everything. It's so weird. Like I don't think it's weird that I trust Eric with literally everything. And the fact that Eric trusts me, that always freaks me out. I go, Eric, why the heck do you trust me? Are you a psychopath? What is wrong with you, Eric? But I think
it's funny because I would want to do things that's kind of pushes the line as far as politically correct. And
so I will throw out jokes, and a lot of times I'll throw out the joke and I'll be like, no, we could never ever say that. And Eric will be like, we're putting it in. I'm like, no, Eric, you're crazy. Oh, we're gonna get canceled. Everybody's gonna. But Eric has zero fear, and so it's just really fun. Like, and so we've got a Deadpool idea. Maybe we've got a script for it. I'm not gonna say whether or not we do. We clearly do.
It's a fantastic script. So Jordan White, if you're listening, editor of Deadpool, it's a fantastic script.
And we've got and you know my dream book that I would kill to work on Eric with. There's this little known DC character called the Heckler, and
that's right. Yes, I read that in the yes.
Yeah, I think we could give it a solid update, Eric and I, and yeah, I think we're hoping we get some calls. Is all I'll say.
Okay. Yeah. And then also, Scott, too, off the cuff question. You know, and hopefully your like Yosemite Sam character hopefully can maybe pop up here and there if you and Eric have future deals with either Marvel or DC, he'll pop up in both universes, even in Dark Horse.
Hopefully, yeah, with my ugly mug there.
All right. So I'm slowly wrapping this up. So, what is the most fun or exciting thing that actually, Scott, I'm going to ask you first, and then Eric, I'm going to then please answer. It's like, what is the most fun or exciting thing that you love working in comics?
Well, so I have a letter from when I was 8 years old that I wrote to Marvel Comics. I want to draw comics. Little 8-year-old Scott. I at the time I wanted to both write and draw them. Thank the good gracious heavens above that I have nothing to do with drawing, because I still draw like an 8-year-old kid to this day. But I wrote this letter when everybody thought comics, you were weird for reading them.
Yes.
I was sitting on the bench. I was reading them. This was before the Marvel movies came out, when people would be like, this guy likes comics, get out of my face.
Yes.
And so it's just always been a dream of mine. And I just turned 40 this year. It would have been nice if I got it when I was 20, but the fact that I'm getting it now is just really a blessing. And I'm hoping one thing that I'm kind of proud of doing is I write 5 pages a day, no matter what, without fail.
Yes.
I've got scripts ready and rearing to go, and just all I hope I get from this is the opportunity to get these out there. And I hope just my name becomes synonymous with Eric's as just the ass kickers who took on these comics and rock the ever loving heck out of them. That's my polite way of saying something that would usually have more swearing. But yes, that's it.
Eric, what about you?
Man, I've been doing this for so long that I mean, the interesting part about my work is continuously changing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but as far as style wise, I change a lot, and it really depends on the book, but I think that would be a positive thing. But we'll see, though. I mean, but working with this book in particular, it actually brought me back to, God, I can't believe it, but I don't know if you remember Strange Girl, my Strange Girl with
No,
Rick
sorry.
Remender. Well, my goodness, Strange Girl is by far my favorite work I've ever done. It's the first comic book that I actually did the artwork for, and it's a funny thing because Rick and we broke in at the same time doing create our own book for Image, and I had no idea as far as what style I was going to go or how it's going to be drawn. So it was raw work, and man, it was so fun. And the style really represented how I do other work, which was different at the time. But once I started doing more Marvel and DC work, my style changed to being a little bit more rigid, I think. It went from a lot more open line work to darker. And also, to me, paneling wise, became a little rigid as far as to fit storytelling with the scripts I was getting. But now going back to this, where I'm breaking borders, I'm using figures to narrate as well throughout the book, and I'm just doing crazy stuff that I think is entertaining as far as an artist go. And you'll see down the line where I'm just doing. I mean, people call it crazy paneling, but I think it's fun paneling if it has a purpose. And to me, it helps me tell the story the way that it should be told. Even though we're breaking borders, we're having multiple images of the same person on the panel, and but it works. So I think it works.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. All right, couple actually about two. I'm gonna about 2 or 3 more questions. Scott, I'm gonna start this off with you. Favorite convention moment, whether as a fan, or if you've been at, as a creator.
I'm probably the worst guy in the world to ask this because I don't go out much. I'm a very in person. Being around the crowds, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person to ask this question to. However, that being said, there was one convention that I went to before we sold to Dark Horse. We printed out some copies. I went to a convention. Eric was supposed to come with me, but he couldn't make it like at the last minute. And so I'm there by myself, a white guy trying to promote and sell White Savior. And so I am sweating like a pig. I'm nervous as all hell. They're going to come after me. They're going to see the White Savior. They're not going to know. But everybody looked at the cover that Eric drew. They got the idea behind the book, and they laughed like hell.
Yes.
And so for me, it was just very much a relief that everybody kind of got it and understood what it was. And that is my probably only convention story because I'm a weirdo shut-in. Yes. Eric, you want to go this one?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite con moment is before I even broke in. Is my first con waiting for McFarlane to sign a silver Spider-Man 1.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, man. I mean, McFarlane. I mean, even Liefeld at the time. They're the one that made everything so exciting back then. I mean, at that time, I wasn't so critical of art or anything. I just remember how fun their work was. McFarlane's work on Spider-Man was just so amazing. And when he started writing as well, I enjoyed it. I mean, he got his critics, but I enjoyed it as a youngster. It was fantastic. And Rob Liefeld's work on X-Force, amazing. I mean, when I look at it now, of course, I've changed as far as my viewpoints go and my artistic what I gear to these days. But I remember back then buying multiple copies. Right? Yes. We bought multiple copies of these things, kept them bagged, and it was exciting. I mean, I hope that this industry gets that excitement back. But back then, those guys, Jim, for me, it was Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld. Jim Lee was fantastic. Will Spatacia was fantastic. I mean, those guys really made it so. And it hasn't. I don't know. it's been a while. I hope it gets back to that sort of excitement.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Let's see. 2 more questions. Scott, I'm going to start. Actually, Eric, I'm going to start off this question for you. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
My brother and I, we have, as a family, no.
Okay, no, but okay, but you and your brother, okay,
Yeah. We had a fun time in Hawaii.
That's fine, yeah.
It's awesome. But that was like maybe 17, 20 years ago when I was single. I haven't been back there as a married person yet, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe
Scott?
I can crash at your place.
Yeah. Yes.
Scott, we have a place in Hawaii.
Yeah, there you go. And also too, we have conventions here in Hawaii, comic conventions. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, now that we got a place to stay, maybe we'll stop. You're guys gonna knock on your door one day. It's gonna be me and Alex with a bunch of luggage, and we're just gonna barge our way in.
Mm-hmm.
No, my wife's birthday is 1 week from today. She might be in the other room hearing me. Knowing her, she's got her earphones in and she can't hear a thing. But she's been wanting a trip to Hawaii, and I'm not gonna say whether or not she's gonna get it. But yeah, we'll just throw that out there for the world and let her maybe be happy or cry in a week.
All right, last question. Scott, I'm going to start off with you. Any closing words for our listeners?
Just one closing word. Get out there and read White Savior. It is the funniest, most action-packed, most badass, most hysterical comic in the history of comics. I feel bad for every other comic because of how great our comic is. So be sure, call your local comic store, get the copy of White Savior 1 before it sells out. Best comic you'll ever read. That's my closing statement right there.
Eric, what about you?
How can I beat that one? I can't.
Eric, I want you to repeat it.
I hope that people come out to their stores, get a copy, or have that digital download, and it really is a funny comic. I mean, just the jokes in there. If I'm not offended by it, no one's going to be offended by it. Yes. So it's very funny. I think everyone's going to get a chuckle from it. It really is not definitely. I mean, it's great to me. It was a fun book, and again, it's like one of the books that when you read it, you laugh, and so that's I hope that comes across.
Yes. I'm just gonna wrap this up already because I don't want to spoil anything. But so Eric and Scott, I wish you guys all the success with White Savior. Mahalo. Thank you, and Hawaiian. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview you guys. And I also want to give a big shout out to Mike Myers again. Mike, thank you very much. If you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out White Savior. When this episode airs, the first issue will be out in stores, but as Eric has mentioned too as well, you can also get a digital copy as well too. Issue 2, as you've heard already, that issue 2 is going to get a lot crazier. So that comes out on February 15th. This is a fun book to read, and to me, there's laugh out moments, but also too, there's a little bit of a nice story about Todd and how Todd is probably gonna learn a little bit more about his roots. I think it's gonna be great. Yeah. So but I'll leave it at that. And I want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode Until next time, guys, aloha.
The good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit have been doing 2 episodes a week for quite some time now, and it's all thanks to, first of all, Jason, and second of all, our patrons who allow us to add the space on our server, broadcast more, store more, share more with you, the listeners. I'm envious of those of you who have unlimited storage and media server capabilities. We pay for ours here at the C4FAP. It ain't cheap. We thank you so much for those of you who go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and contribute at any level to say thanks, to say, I want to be a part of your Slack channel conversations. I want to get exclusives. I want to get early access. I want to get ad-free access. I want to get swag. I want to get some free stuff. Whatever your reasoning is, we appreciate it at any level because it does make a difference. So from the bottom of Kyle and I and Jason's heart, thank you for contributing.